Hey, it's Cole Swindell, and when I spend 200 days a year rolling down the highway, the bus can start to feel smaller than a guitar case. Everyone wonders how I stay chill while the hours crawl by. Truth is, one good luck spin on Chumba, and suddenly the trip feels a whole lot shorter. Finding your space, even when there isn't much to spare. Need some chill? Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus TNC Supply. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Victory Lane? Yeah, it's even better with Chumba by my side. Race to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See TNCs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
Some things never cease to amaze me. Sunrises, hitting a golf ball straight, and the overwhelming ignorance of the common person. Here's a thought. Use Form Bs to determine classification. This, in fact, is competitive balance. Season 8 of Sun Coaches Podcast, where not everyone is funny or tells funny stories, but everyone has a story. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 8, and today I'm excited to be joined by an athletic director. I figured that, starting off the new year, it's job season. Who better to kick us off for Season 8 than athletic director at Duluth High School, Coach Chris Hall. Thanks for being on with me.
Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it, and excited. Longtime listener of all the podcasts, and super pumped to be on here.
Well, Coach, where did you grow up and go to high school?
So I grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. My parents are, I guess you would say, work for the government. So I grew up in Huntsville until 8th grade, and then we moved to Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. So my stepdad worked for the Pentagon, and my mom worked for Boeing. And so I went to 8th grade and through high school in Fairfax County at Centerville High School. And so if you're not real familiar with the area, it's kind of like a suburb of Atlanta. So it's probably 30 miles outside of D.C. And that's where I went to high school at. And I played soccer growing up, wrestled, played basketball for a year, golfed, played football, baseball. And then in high school, I played mainly just football and baseball. And I kind of wish sometimes now I'm into golf a lot more, that golf up there was in the fall. And I kind of wish it had been in the spring. I would have liked to try to play both, but it was fun. We were at a big school, one of the biggest schools in Virginia, and we were pretty successful. I think my first 3 years in high school, we lost to the eventual state champion, either in the quarters or the semis. And then my senior year, we were lucky enough to win it.
That's awesome. State champion.
Yep.
As a player.
Yeah.
And then you parlayed that into going to Florida State, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I guess let me back up a little bit. Growing up, when I moved to Virginia in 8th grade, I got diabetes, and I'd always been one of the largest kids in school. And when I got diabetes, the timing of it kind of, I guess, slowed down my growth. So I was 5'11", 170 pounds going into 8th grade. And I went into the hospital a couple months later, and I was 5'11", 132 pounds. And so after that diagnosis, though, the doctor was like, look, it's messing with your endocrine system and all your glands. You're probably not going to grow much more. And so I didn't. I've only grown out since then, right? And but when I was playing, I moved up to Virginia. It was too late to play football. I played fall baseball, which I had never done before. And a kid on my team, his dad was the high school head coach. And he was like, well, you got to come back out next year. And I said, well, yeah, sure, I want to. And so for 9th grade, I went out, and I was playing, in a wing tee offense. I was playing fullback, and they said, we need tryouts for kickers and punters. And they threw out some balls and said, anyone can do it. So I grabbed one, and I guess I hit a couple good punts. And, so I ended up becoming a punter. I ended up dressing for varsity at the end of the year. And the coach tells me and this other kid, He's like, look, y'all need to go. There's a coach here at West Springfield High School that played in the NFL, and he runs a kicking camp at Lehigh University. You should go. So me and this our kicker named Brian, we went up there, and we learned how to kick and punt for real from real coaches. And it was weird because there was 100-something kickers and punters out on the field, and it was different. It was not a normal football camp, right? But I learned how to do it, and I wanted to keep playing, fullback and linebacker, and my coaches still wanted me to play, and my doctor was like, "Your blood sugar is crazy." My A1C was like 13. I was hard headed and didn't do what I was supposed to do, and she's like, "I'm not signing off on your physical." And I basically had to beg, borrow, and steal to get her to sign off, and told her I will just punt until I get my numbers back in order. Well, ended up having a really good sophomore year. We lost in the state, I guess, semis again. And some college coaches happened to be there in Maryland and a couple others. And they told my coach, hey, we'd love to recruit him. And, anyway, started getting attention. And I was like, well, shoot, if I can get his college scholarship punting, why worry about all the other stuff, right? So I just kind of stuck with it. Ended up training my brothers, but yeah, so as a junior, or I guess at the end of my junior year, going into my senior year, I went to a couple camps. I went to Virginia Tech's camp where my coach had played at, and it flew from there to Florida State, and had a few different offers after high school, getting recruited, and ended up choosing. My final two visits were between Penn State and Florida State, and I went to Penn State this weekend, so the first weekend of January, and it snowed about 8 or 10 inches. Super cool, beautiful campus, colder than crap. The next weekend I went to Florida State. The weather was beautiful. My wife, she's a Florida State girl, and I've told her a million times there are many, many beautiful women go to Florida State. And at the time, Florida State had been on top of the world. From the late 80s through the 90s, Florida State was the best program in the country. They were what Alabama and Georgia have recently become. And so I wanted to go play with the best, and I took a walk-on spot there, and with the opportunity to compete, and got a scholarship in my second year there. And had an absolute blast at Florida State. So that's how I ended up there. I'll be glad to tell you some more stories about that if you got any particulars.
Well, who was your football coach when you were there?
So I played for Bobby Bowden, and when thinking about doing this show, I thought about it. When you think about the greatest coaches of all time for football, at least, and there's a Mount Rushmore. I don't know how you wouldn't have him on there, and not just so much for the wins or the heartbreak losses, but just for the lives he changed, right? And the difference he made, and probably saving a lot of kids, and really honestly taught me a lot about just very simple philosophy on how to treat people. He didn't have a lot of rules, and he said, if you have a lot of rules, you got to enforce them all. And his rule was simple. It was just do the right thing, just very, very simple, right? And he used to use the analogy about being on the newspaper, and if your mama would want to read it or not, and talk to
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Another checkered flag for the books. Time to celebrate with Chumba. Jump in at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
about living in a fishbowl, and just kind of doing the right thing. And so I felt like I learned a lot of life lessons. He spent a lot of time giving testimonies, and preaching to us, and a man that was not ashamed of his faith. And I think that was awesome. I think the life experiences, going there, I was kind of in and out of church, I guess, growing up a little bit, but just going there and having him take us to an AME church in Tallahassee. And then the next week, our whole team would go to First Baptist Church, and just seeing the difference between the two, but him saying, look, it doesn't matter, about skin color or, background or nothing like that. We're all going to be one team, and I want you to feel welcome no matter where you're at. And just I think being exposed to those opportunities, and his goal was to give you perspective and and ability to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand why somebody was raised differently, but how you can find common ground and similarities. And I think those are some of the, I guess, the qualities that I took most from him in my time there.
Where was your favorite place to play other than at home at Doak Campbell? What was your favorite, like, that you visited
Uh,
that you're like, oh man, I would play here? I mean, if I could, if I wasn't playing where I'm at, I'd love to
yeah.
play here. Where were some of the coolest places you got to go play?
I mean, so anywhere in the ACC, um, there was, let's see, so Clemson, before they had finished in the other end, was really a neat place, a night game. The Swamp, I mean, I hate the Swamp as a visitor, but I mean, if you're a Gator fan, I guess it would be pretty cool. It's super loud. I played in the old Orange Bowl before they tore it down, and it it just had a weird ambiance, I guess, about it. It's just a weird place. Like, it's just, when they talk about like the ghosts of the Orange Bowl, they weren't lying. Um, but I'll be honest, man, the coolest place to go to was Notre Dame. So we went there in '03, and I think we ended up beating them that year. We had paid them back for beating us before. We beat them 37-0 at Notre Dame, and just walking in that place, and the day before doing a walkthrough and seeing Touchdown Jesus and being in that stadium, and you're just like, man, I've seen Rudy, and this is where it happened. And just like walking around and then seeing like just all the it's all the pomp and circumstance, right? Like the I don't know what they call them, but those guys that are like 6'5", the high step in with the band, and the field, the grass is cut at 3 inches, and you couldn't even hardly see a ball when you're trying to kick, and just going in the locker room, and the tile floor is so worn down from cleats over the years, and you're like, man, just imagine who else is come in this bathroom and take a leak, right? And I know that sounds stupid, but it's just like, man, just the history of Notre Dame, I think, was the coolest place to go see. But someone asked me the other day too, in the bowl games. I mean, the bowl games to me were the best experience. Played in, let's see, a Sugar Bowl in '02 that we lost to Georgia. We played in 2 Gator Bowls and 2 Orange Bowls, and I just thought those were really, really cool experiences, just to get to go and kind of unwind and have a good time.
So, what was the worst place you
Well, the Swamp. Uh,
went?
so I mean, if you're a Gator fan, I'm sure it's cool. As a visiting fan, it is awful. The amount of obscenities and trash being thrown down from the upper decks. I mean, when they tell you get off the bus, keep your eyes up and peeled, I mean, they're not lying. But honestly, Duke, uh, Duke, Duke was the by far the worst, because I mean, we played in bigger crowds in high school games, and there's certainly bigger crowds in Georgia at high school football games. Maybe not now. Duke's gotten a little bit better, but back then, I mean, they were horrible. I mean, every game was up there. It was 56-0. Everyone was going to get a chance to play, and they put you in a locker room that was about 100 yards past the end zone, and it was like the lacrosse practice locker room. And I mean, literally, we have better away facilities here in Georgia, with more room. And you're talking about, I mean, this is the ACC, and they had about 2, maybe 3 showers that actually worked. And I mean, it was no bigger than a closet. I mean, it was by far the worst facilities. And I know they've upgraded them since then, but as a visiting fan, it just felt like they wouldn't even let the kickers. They barely even let us in the locker room. They're like, y'all get your stuff and get out. We got to make room for all the rest of the actual football players, right? So we had to grab our Hershey bar and get out. So, but yeah, that was rough. Carter Finley, NC State's a weird place too, man. It's it's like haunting. It's haunted, especially if you're a Florida State person.
Yeah, I met Coach Amato once when he was the head coach at NC State,
Yeah.
and he was different. but nice guy, but the
Yeah.
way his voice, he kind of
Oh,
raspy voice, and he was real touchy. Like he'd hug you and
yeah.
grab you. I guess it's the Italian background. Is just
Yeah, the Italian.
real friendly
Yeah.
guy and nice guy. But we did they had their every college has a camp or whatever, but it was the NC
Mhm.
State camp, and all of us coaches were up there, and he was just like the coolest guy. But the
Yeah.
stadium was weird. Like we went to watch their spring game,
Mhm.
and it's like you said, it was just sitting in there. I was like, because I got a cousin, her husband graduated from NC State, and I was like, dude, how do you sit in there and watch a game? That is a weird, weird place. And
Yeah.
Coach Amato got a lot of things updated while he was there, but
Yeah.
it was a different place. So who was the best person you played with, like player that you were like, oh my god, that dude is different?
Oh, a dude. Um, let's see. When I came in 2001. I'm trying to think. I mean, there was, I played. Um, I would say the best. I mean, there was a couple freaks, and they would make the freak list, and I would say number one was Greg Jones. Um, if you not sure, just type in Greg Jones, North Carolina. I think it's Dexter Reed, and there's a video on YouTube where they called Dexter Reed Mr. Potato Head after he hit him, as his helmet and everything went flying off, and all Greg did was give him a forearm as he was running down the field. And I can't remember, his uncle or something was like Joe Frazier, and he was about 255 pounds, 6'1". I think he was from Beaufort, South Carolina, and he was a man child. But he was, he used to make the kickers. We had to stand in the back behind they would do kind of like an inside, but inside versus scout. And then our running backs coach wanted us to stand about 20 yards downfield. He wanted them to run and burst. And then we were supposed to stand there and reach in and try and strip the ball. And we were standing there one day, and Greg's running at us, and he kind of cut at the last second. And I mean,
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Another checkered flag for the books. Time to celebrate with Chumba. Jump in at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
I thought I saw my life flash before me. I thought he was about to hit me on accident. And next thing you know, the running back coach, why didn't y'all strip him? We're like, Coach, we ain't getting anywhere near him. Like, we're not going to rip the ball out, and I don't think anyone else is either. But but you know what? Greg was also the nicest guy in the world. Super nice, very humble. Played with the Jags for a long time. Ernie Sims was a local kid from Tallahassee, North Florida Christian, that ended up being a top 10 draft pick. That was just a freak athlete. Could run, jump, hit, and now I think he just got promoted at Florida State to be the linebackers coach. But he played in the NFL for a while. I mean, just it was crazy to be there and see some of those guys and the athletic ability that they could do. Just, I mean, Lorenzo Booker, the balance of doing one leg squats and a scoop and he's sitting there doing 315 with one leg squats, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't make it look that smooth with two legs, and and you're doing it on one. And just Antonio Cromartie was a freak athlete. Just I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of really really good athletes. And Broderick Bunkley. We used to joke that everyone called him John Coffey from Green Mile, and he was a defensive tackle and had no neck on him. But I mean, watching him bench press 550 pounds for reps, and you're just like, holy cow, the bar isn't supposed to bend like that. And he's benching it, and with no help and no shirts. And you're just, I mean, I was always in awe, of just how big and physical some of the guys I played with and were. So it was interesting.
So what was your major? What did you go to school to do besides be an NFL punter?
Uh, well, it's funny you say that. I was actually never interested in the NFL that much. My goal in high school was to go play in college, um, but it depends on who you ask. What my major was, I'm sure it varied from time to time. Um, I I mean, not gonna lie. I mean, fun was a major. I think for a couple years, I had to get NCAA said you had to at least choose a major. So I was for a little while. I was in criminology for 2 semesters to get my GPA back up. Um, because some programs you had to have a minimum GPA to apply to, and then um, so I got it up after doing, and I loved criminology. It was fun. Not what I wanted to do, but I did enjoy doing it. Then I did sports management, um, and I should have gotten the teaching certificate part of PE because my degree says PE, but I had no teaching certificate. And then when I finished playing, I stayed on and I was a grad. Oh, I worked for a year and a half actually in facilities. And while you worked as a full time employee, they paid for grad school. And then my last year of grad school, I became a GA for academics. So I got my master's at Florida State, also in sports administration. So once I was in my major, I had above a 3.0 or a 3.5, or, actually, I think I made the dean's list once or twice. And I even have the paper to prove it, I think, somewhere. But before that, it was a struggle just, for honestly, it's not for smarts. It's just for having too much fun and not applying myself. And, it's Florida State too. I mean, it's a hard place to stay focused for a number of reasons.
So when you got out, what was your first job out of school?
Yeah. So, um, well, when I finished playing, I finished in December of '05. And like I said, I wasn't really, I mean, I had a couple of people, I met with the agent, a couple teams were interested. And I just said, I don't really want to go be a camp leg. I trained with guys like that for years. And so I said, being diabetic, I was like, I need insurance. And I had a opportunity. I'd worked in the summers in grounds with athletics, mowing the field and painting and picking up trash and doing all the stuff around mainly baseball and softball. And I enjoyed it. And I had a great group of guys. And so they had an opening and he said he'd hire me. So I started like mid-February, like 6, maybe 8 weeks after the season. I started full time and working for the university in grounds. And it was awesome. I sat on big old, John Deere mowers, and uh, we picked up trash after baseball games, and got sprayed with sunflower seeds and dip spit, and and I really enjoyed it though. It was a great group of guys. It really gave you behind the scenes show of like, hey, everyone sees the 83,000 people that show up on Saturday for the game, but they don't see the preparation that goes into painting the field, or taking care of a baseball field, or hey, you're hosting a super regional and you got 3 games each day, and after the games, everyone leaves, but it's midnight and you got to have the stadium flip for 8 a.m. Batting practice. Well, guess what? We're there for 23.45 hours. We had to clock out and clock back in, and for 3 days in a row. And I just remember thinking, holy cow, this is crazy. But I was loving it. I was making overtime, and at the time that was a lot better than scholarship money. And so that was my first, like, I guess, real job. I'd had jobs in high school and college, just, working as a bus boy or working at a golf course and doing outdoor stuff kind of. But yeah. And then when I finished my master's so like I said, that last year was a grad assistant in academics, which is kind of odd. But I finished. My wife and I were going to get married, and it was 2008. What a great time to look for a job. And we came up here back where she's from. She's from Norcross, Peachtree Corners area. And I interviewed at Norcross High School, and they were the only one that actually responded to me. And I think it's because my wife had worked, or she had been a student there when Keith Maloof had went to Norcross. And the AD, Kirk Barton, uh, she was an aide for him her senior year. So I think they felt pity on her and said, we'll give him a job. So I started off as a parapro at Norcross High School in the fall of 2008.
In the in the
Yeah.
ATL, my
Yeah. And the
favorite place
ATL,
on earth, said nobody else.
man. No, yeah. The first thing I did was buy a GPS because I said, "This is crazy. How many peach trees can there possibly be?" I remember I bought one of those Garmin GPS things for my truck. I had no clue how to get anywhere.
Yeah, that Johns Creek is Emory at Johns Creek's where I go to get my back surgeries, and I drive through Peachtree Corners every time, and I'm like, I cannot believe that
Yep.
people live here.
No,
They choose to live here. Now,
they
I don't
they
know what they do
this
for a living, but they're not high school football coaches because these houses are expensive.
right, right. That's the truth. And now, when her parents moved there, her dad had went to Lakeside High School in the '70s and played football in 1970 when they won that state championship with Wayman Creel, and so they were like local people. He went to Tech, um, and I guess they moved to Peachtree Corners in the early '80s. And like everything, they said, when you talk to my wife, she says in the '90s, North Gwinnett and the outer parts of Gwinnett were still farmland, and now no one would ever confuse Gwinnett with a farm. There's maybe a few bits and pieces left out by Decula in that area, but I mean, just seeing the growth, even in the 18 years we've been here, is pretty crazy. But I've told my wife I would entertain jobs not around here, and I told her a couple years ago. I said, honey, don't worry, Amazon will deliver, even if it's in Tifton or Cordele or wherever. They got the post office and Amazon will deliver. Um,
Yeah,
so,
I had some
but
waiting on my porch today when I got home. Some
hey,
leftover Christmas, I guess. I don't
yeah,
know. I just bring the boxes in the house.
yeah,
And my
they'll
wife tells me
deliver.
what we got.
Exactly,
So
they'll
what did
deliver
you
anywhere.
anywhere?
So.
And they got drones now. So what was your job at Duluth other than at Norcross other than being a parapro? Did you coach?
So yeah, so I started off. I went down and I wasn't so sure Keith even wanted to talk to me, Coach Maloof, and because it's funny, if I'd played at Georgia, I assumed I would have gotten probably 100 email responses from everybody, and because I was at Florida State, I got nobody to respond. I'd sent my email to all these principals and ads and nothing, and so anyways, he was sitting there and he was kind of looking out the window and he said, "Hey, well, here, go in here and see what these guys are doing." They were getting ready scouting for, I guess, the Corky Kell. They were playing Walton and the Corky Kell. And he said, "Well, go in here and just, talk to them." I said, "Okay." So I went in there and talked to them. And Reggie Cochran was a DB coach, and Heath Heron, who's now at Monroe, and a couple other guys. Corey Richardson's the head coach now, and they were all super nice. And they were like, "Well, here, what do you know?" And I was like, "Not a damn thing. Um, like, I don't know anything. I'll work hard, do it. You tell me what to do." So they, had me start writing stuff down in Excel sheets, and I didn't know how to use a computer. And so I just started in and started telling stories. And I feel like that Saturday they were like, "Get on the bus, be here at this time. We're going down to the Dome, and we're playing Walton and the Corey Kill." So okay, cool. So that was I literally started coaching, I think the first, like during pre-planning, I had went down there and he said, "We'll come back on Sunday for film." So that was like my first bit. And it was the first week of school. We were playing Walton and the Corkel. And yeah, so before you knew it, I was coaching ninth grade, obviously. And I think my second year, I got named the head ninth grade coach. And I was the head ninth grade coach for, I want to say 4, maybe 5 years. And then the last 2 years, I came up and ran scout team for our defense and just was our special teams coordinator. Because at that point, I was pretty much looking at that, especially my last year. I had got into they had a program in Gwinnett for aspiring ads, and so I pretty much knew that was what I wanted to do. Um, but after a while being the head ninth grade coach, I loved it. We had 80, 90 kids, and I had a full staff of 7 or 8 assistants, and still remember Keith saying, like, "This is probably the most important thing. This is where we teach our kids our expectations, where we teach them, how to run on and off the field and do the right thing, and just be coachable and teach them how to win." And I loved it. I really truly felt like I was my own head coach. And so I felt like that prepared me as much as anything for being a coach. And I've heard on the podcast, a lot of programs would love to have 80 or 90 kids in their entire program. And I'm not lying. The group that won the second state championship in 13 when they were freshmen, I mean, I had double numbers for so many jerseys. We had, no lie, probably 90 to 95 kids on that team, and for freshman football. And it was a lot, and trying to get those kids in a freshman game with even a shorter clock was something. But it was fun. I learned a lot, a lot from Coach Maloof and a lot of those guys there.
Well, that's something I try to encourage young coaches, especially in the past 10 years. That you got so many guys coming out of school and they turn their nose up at a ninth grade opportunity, and I'm like, guys, if you're the head coach of a ninth grade program at a big school, it is
Yeah,
numerically the same as being the head coach at a single A, double A, or even some triple A schools. Now, I'm not saying the talent's the same, and I'm not
for
saying
sure.
that the games, a ninth grade game is the same, and I'm not saying that a single, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying from a managerial and logistic standpoint, you are preparing to run your own program because they essentially go, "Hey, Coach Hall, you got them.
Yeah, yeah,
Here's what I
yeah.
want you to do. I don't want to hear from any mamas and daddies. Here's your bus. Here's your locker room. Here's your stuff. Go get them." And I don't know why
That's
a
about
young
true.
coach, yeah, and I don't know why young coaches these days, they think they've got to come out and be a varsity coordinator or varsity whatever, when you could actually gain more valuable experience on the
Yeah.
ninth grade level at a big school.
Well, 100%. You get to own it. I mean, everything I did was, um, I mean, obviously we use the same terminology and systems, and we would learn the same drills. So we're teaching the same things, but I mean, it was my program. And um, I say that, I had a great group of assistants around me that we're still good friends with, a lot of them today. And it was fun. It was kind of like our own program, though. I mean, Keith had his hands full on the other field with 120 or 30 of his own varsity and JV kids. So, um, and we would just randomly, he would show up on his golf cart and chew a little ass and go back up top. And if he didn't like something, but I got to know pretty well his expectations, and I think it was fun. Like you said, it was a great learning experience, and probably prepared me as much as anything.
So where did you go after Norcross?
So, I got in that aspiring AD program, and I really wanted to get into being athletic director. The ADs at my high school had meant a lot to me, and I just I kind of felt that was the next step versus trying to be a head football coach. And so I knew there was a few job openings in the county at the time, and I interviewed for a couple. And I know one was kind of a courtesy interview, and I just said, "Hey, look, when you hire that guy, can you call the school where that guy's coming from and help me get an interview there?" And the principal said, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." So I went over there and interviewed, and I thought it did really good. It was a total different background, and I knew the other guy that interviewed right in front of me because they had left the door cracked. So I was like, "Well, I said he did a good job too." And they ended up going with the other guy, and I said, "Well, okay." Well, then on the way to the AD conference, I heard a third job was going to open. So I said, "All right, when I get back from Savannah, I'll have it ready." I went and interviewed that Wednesday, and the guy offered me on the spot. And I said, "You know what? I've been turned down twice. I'm not going to leave again without taking it." And so I took the job, and then I told my wife in the car, and she said, "Well, I thought you were going to ask me first." I said,
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. The rush of racing? Nothing beats it. But Chumba Casino comes close. Chumba's got fast spins, fun games, daily bonuses, and all the action you can handle. Now that's a ride. Ready to hit the throttle? Get in the driver's seat and head to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
"Were you going to say anything different?" And she said, "No." I said, "Okay, well." So I'm the new AD at Discovery High School, which, it had opened that year. So it was February, or I guess March, um, of the first year of that school being open. And at that time, they had already lost the football coach and most of his staff. Ephraim and I got hired by the board on the same day to start. And so it was a new school. I mean, I hired 26 coaches the first year. And I think our principal we hired almost 96 new staff members, which I know sounds crazy, but that's how much turnover there was. And so that I feel like our first year together was almost like my principal used the term like a rebirth. Like like we came out a little premature. Now we're back. The second year is more of a fresh start, And so I was there for 6 years, and I learned a lot, and it was really good being at a school that, um, interesting, had no traditions, had no, no faculty per se to lean on. How do you do this? How do you do homecoming? How do you do? We had nothing, right? We had no traditions, no history. So everything there we got to kind of come up with, which I think, for me, was a better situation than going to a school that had established traditions, right? So you get to kind of set the tone. You get to do everything you do as a first. Our football team made the playoffs for the first time. Our basketball team won the region championship in boys, and we hosted a couple playoff games and ended up losing in the quarterfinals at home to Tift. But it was cool to see the momentum, right? And then COVID hit and just kind of slammed everything back down. But it was really cool to go into a school when they're brand new with, it looks like a hospital with just white walls, and be able to kind of do things, right? And learn from there.
So after your 6 years at Discovery, what was the next stop?
So I came to Duluth, and I've been here. This is my fourth year at Duluth. So, and Duluth, one of those cool schools that's on the opposite end of that. It's got all the history. Um, it has some traditions. It's got a great history. I mean, with George Rogers, the Heisman Trophy winner from 1980, and just some of the, Brian McCann and some of the legendary athletes that came through here. And people don't think about Duluth, but it was a powerhouse, and it was really, really good in football in the 70s and 80s under Cecil Morris. And they were really good in some other sports and track and field. And it really is a really cool, neat downtown area. But honestly, the school, when they opened up a rival school about 20 years ago, kind of took a lot of the, I guess, energy with it, right? And so the school, as a visiting AD and coach, I was like, man, that's a cool school. If somebody got in there that could do this or that. And so I kind of looked at it as a challenge to come in and try and, we're trying to get together a Hall of Fame, and we've rebranded and, kind of brought everything, kind of unified it all back together, done some naming of a couple facilities, and trying to reach back out to the alumni, the old school Duluth people. And the thing I found out is there's some people that have been around here, their family's been around for 100, 120, 30, 40 years in this area that are very, very passionate about Duluth.
That's awesome. We're going to transition into, your job as an AD, but one of your favorite things, I'm sure, is when you're looking for coaches. And this is for the listeners out there. If you're a coach
Sure.
gearing up for the job search, you already know your portfolio can make or break your next opportunity. At coachingportfolio.com, we help coaches at every level stand out with elite, professional-grade portfolios, resumes, and interview prep tools. From ready-to-use templates to custom-built documents, we take the guesswork out of the process. Whether you're chasing your first job or dream job, be prepared, be polished, and be unforgettable. Visit coachingportfolio.com and make your next move with confidence. So as an athletic director, you control, or you have to deal with every sport, not just football.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it like for you when you go through a hiring process? Or, how many of those have you had to willingly or unwillingly go through?
Well, I mean, it's funny. So I will put this out front. In 10 years, I have not hired a head football coach. I was involved in the process when we hired Ephraim. When I came to Duluth, when the previous AD was here, she's a very good friend of mine, and she asked me, hey, here's a bunch of resumes. What do you think? And I told her, you need to hire Cam. He would be my first interview. And then there's another guy that's at another school right now. I won't say his name. I said he would be my other interview. and I would interview those two guys, and I would make one of them choose, and then I would try and hold on to Cam. And so I felt like I offered a lot of assistance, but I wasn't actually in there, right? But that being said, I've hired pretty much every other head coaching position, on a staff, and I think it's interesting. It kind of, I think some of the things I look for, just one is, you know, the amount of resumes or I guess information you get that is got like your ad read right there. It's a great example. Just, I mean, can you not spell check? Um, um, can you, just, I mean, just honestly, like the amount of errors, the stuff that looks, unprofessional, I guess. And I'm not talking about just reading it, but if I just glance at the resume first thing and I see a bunch of misspelled stuff or stuff's not spaced right or different fonts and stuff doesn't look right, I'm just like, I don't know. In my mind, my first impression is that it's maybe not as polished, right? But I say that I've also learned, like, I'm not gonna just judge somebody solely off a resume, right? So my biggest thing is I love the network. It's one of the reasons I love listening to your show and going to the AD conferences. And I went to their recruiting fair a few weeks ago just to go see a lot of familiar faces. I love the fact if I see somebody and they're at a school that I know the AD or I know a coach at that school, I just pick up the phone and or text or call somebody and ask. And I tell people all the time in my own school building, I have conversations with assistants and say, hey, do you want to be a head coach? And if that is something you want, I tell them every day is an interview, because I'm not going to put my reputation on the line for somebody who I don't think can get the job done. And if they're not the best for the job, it's okay. But if I don't think they can get the job done, I'm not putting my neck out for them. And I may truly believe they may not be the best for the job, but if I think they can get it done, I'm going to pump them up and give them at least a chance and maybe get an interview, right? But I think that's some of the stuff I look for is, who can I call or talk to that can verify this coach's, background or credibility or what they're worth. And I think that's probably most important. Um, I guess to me.
Well, I think you starting off your career in the facilities industry, part of it is significant for the simple fact that in the past 2 or 3 years we've got companies like Turf Tank and you've got digital paint machines and it's not like when you were working at Florida State where you had to pull a string. There wasn't no Turf Tank back then.
Nope.
And you had to do it all. So from the ground level up, you've literally worked from grounds to facilities to being a coach to the next logical step, which would be the administration. So when these coaches complain or, about facilities or whatever else, you can speak from a point of knowledge of saying, "Now, wait a minute."
Yeah.
How many strings do you have to pull?
Right.
We have
for
turf.
sure. And I've told people I have a what do you call it? A little planner book from one of my first years teaching and coaching at Norcross, and I pull it out sometimes. And I've shown people. I said, now look, here it is. Here's October. Here's December 15th. I said, you tell me what day I took off right there. And they're looking. I'm like, there isn't one because from the end of October, when we started the playoff run, I said every week we had football Monday through Friday. We played a few playoff games on Saturday. We were there on Sunday for film, or on Saturdays I was working the wrestling tournament as a gym manager or the basketball tournament, and then there's Thanksgiving. I said there's 2 years in a row where I was at Norcross High School 40 days in a row. And I said, on top of that, I was a special ed teacher. I was in grad school. I was a newlywed. I said, so I don't want to hear that you don't have the time or that you can't get it done. Like if you're looking for sympathy, you're looking in the wrong place. And so to that point, I mean, I can tell you right now that after a football game at Florida State University, we filled up 10 dumpsters full of trash. And that was just trash, not to mention recycling. And it took every bit of Saturday and Sunday, or Saturday night and Sunday, to fill it up. And then on Monday, we would get in a row of backpack blowers and start in the top row, and there's 86 steps to in the stadium at Florida State, and we would start in row 86, and we would just blow, and it would just, I mean, we would have full ski mask on, and it would take about 6 hours, 8 hours to blow all the dirt down from the stadium. So you're right. I mean, I think for me, having done all that stuff, it also helps me tremendously when I talk to our facilities and maintenance people, because I had one tell me the other day, he said, when you put in a work order, we know it came from you because you actually know what you're talking about. And I said, well, I try and take pride in the fact of, I don't just say, hey, the door's broken. I try and say, hey, you need to bring something because the hinge, has come off the wall or something like that, or the screw is stripped. Not a big fix, but I don't have the tool to fix it here. And so I think, I think that pays a big difference. Just uh, knowing all those people, being able to talk to all those people and building relationships, that's, I think, huge, and has helped me a lot. You just get things done.
Well, how important is it to you or for you to have to manage all the budgets for your athletic program? How do you handle such a big, y'all are a big program. You've got
Hmm.
no telling how many sports programs you've got running through your school. I know but I would
Yeah.
guess more than 20. And
Hmm.
and having to juggle and manage the finances for such a large program.
I mean, I would say some of our programs are blessed with some good parents that have booster clubs that are doing a pretty good job. And then there's others that have a booster club that don't, need some help. It's just same old story, always leaning on the same few parents. And then there's some of my programs that don't have the parent support. So I think where I can help them is one of the things I did learn from Keith, especially, was that just ability to kind of go out and fundraise and network and meet people. And so I've been able the last couple of years to help bring in some donations from. We have a lawyer, the local McDonald's. All of those people are given significant amounts of money or food, or and trying to be, I guess, smart with our budget. So, I mean, yeah, I do have a lot of sports and a lot of coaches. Um, I think one of the things you can do is just look at, your expenditures and think, like, every year. Just when I first got here, they only made off of football off an entire year less than $10,000. And I said, that's crazy. We got to look and see where we're spending all this money. If we're not taking in a bunch, we're spending too much. And so just kind of looking and making sure, hey, we don't need that many ticket takers. If we're not selling that many, we certainly don't need that many ticket takers. And just trying to figure out ways to stretch your dollars. Different, like, I go back to that facilities thing. I think if you know the right people and know how to talk to them, you can get things done, and they're willing to help you. We were one of the first gyms to get LED lights, and the reason is I was the first one to respond to the guy, and I said, "Hey, you need us in the gym? Okay, great. What day? All right, cool." I asked the basketball coaches to move to the other gym for one day, and then I said, "Hey, on Tuesday you can go back in the other gym, but don't go in the old gym, because in the old gym they're going to put the lights in that one." So we got our LED lights, last summer, and we could have just went random order. But I think just little things like that, where you're just trying to dress it up and make it look better. I think that helps you stretch a dollar. It also, by making your facilities look better, I think it helps you bring in a little bit more money from the community, and your parents feel they can see that you're doing things right. And I think that's a big thing, is people got to see that you're trying to make improvements and that you care. And that kind of all goes hand in hand.
Absolutely. And there's something that I was going to ask you about. It's not a gotcha question at all. And if you don't want to
Hmm.
discuss it, that's fine. But for our people that aren't Metro Atlanta people and Gwinnett people
Hmm.
especially, they don't understand that when, like at Discovery, you start a
Hmm.
football program, they don't buy the lights. They don't build the stadium. That all
Yeah.
comes from athletics, correct?
Well, so I mean, there's a lot of history to that, but At some point, Gwinnett did not really pay for athletic facilities. And we're going back like 70s, 80s, 90s, right? So when schools like Shiloh, um, were built, they didn't have a stadium. They had to borrow. They would go, I think, to South Gwinnett's, and then when they finally financed the stadium, right? So moving forward, schools like Mill Creek were built. They would build the home side, and Mill Creek borrowed money to build the visitor side. So they had eventually improved, and when Discovery was built, we got visitor stands. We didn't have restrooms or.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Another checkered flag for the books. Time to celebrate with Chumba. Jump in at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
A concession stand on the far side. Baseball field, we did not have dugouts or a press box or anything. Same with softball. It was left, and they said, well, you got to kind of raise the money. And I said, well, that's just not going to happen. I mean, we're not going to be able to raise $300,000 or $400,000 here to be able to do that. And so, when some of the funds for COVID, we had fought my principal. I will say this: she was a bulldog. She went to bat and she took pictures of my kids standing out there in the rain and at baseball, and she's like, "This is crap." We're playing against schools that their indoor facility looks like the Taj Mahal, and my kids are standing out here and can't even get a lean-to. I got tents. I literally had pop-up tents in the dugout for softball to keep, because we're all worried about the heat index. And so we're buying tents, and then a storm pops up and that gets destroyed, and now you're out another $300-$400, and I'm having to pay for porta potties and stuff like that. But I think somebody had mentioned the loans, and that's all true. A lot of Gwinnett schools that have been built, have a loan that they basically kind of loaned out to booster clubs and to the startup money, and you had to work through paying it back. And it's one of those things that, I mean, you knew going in, that's what the deal is. It just doesn't, in my opinion, and it doesn't help, I guess, to start off. But, some schools are different than others, and it's a challenge. And I think that's where you talked about the money a minute ago. I think that's where, when I was at Discovery, I mean, those first few years, we made the payment every year. And so it wasn't easy, but we found a way, right? And I think my football coach at the time, Ephraim, and his staff, I mean, we were willing to host track meets. And, I mean, he was out there working the grill and selling, fries and hot dogs and hamburgers. And, in a weekend track meet, he would make, maybe 10 grand off 3 days over Memorial Day. Now, here he is giving up Memorial Day, the whole weekend and working to sell money, but he would give, he made sure he had the money to help pay back the loan. And so at least I'm proud of that. But it was definitely a challenge. But I mean, like you said, you learn from a lot of those challenges. You do learn how to make money go, and you try and use the resources you have. And I'm never one to complain about, what you don't have. Just go to work with what you do have, right?
Absolutely. I just wanted the people to hear, it's such a different universe in Middle and South Georgia than it is in the metro. And I don't think people appreciate all the time how much of an expense it is for the facilities and to make sure, like Title IX, I've always argued it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say from a backwards standpoint, but
Mm-hmm.
I've always said it works both ways. Why not give the female athletes the best that you can give them?
Sure.
And then work back the other way, because
Right.
it's going to be a whole lot easier for you to raise money for the revenue producing sports and
Mm-hmm.
everything else. But why not make sure that those young ladies have the best of whatever you can give them? And
Yeah.
it's just a lot of times in conversations I have with people that have never experienced or been around metro guys, they don't understand. You guys have a totally different set of challenges that you have to deal with than most of us. We'll use a lot of Middle and South Georgia schools use eSPLOS money and whatever else for facilities and things like that, because they can essentially do what they want to with it,
Mm-hmm.
if they've labeled it as such during the election process. And they just don't understand what you guys deal with on a day-to-day basis. And there's things
Right.
that we do that y'all probably don't understand what we deal
Yeah.
with on a day-to-day basis. But I just wanted you to kind of talk on that a little bit, because it is interesting, and it is something that when people are considering, taking that head coaching job, regardless of what the sport is in the metro area, you're going to be playing by a different set of rules than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I remember at Discovery, I went down to the GHSA, and we were going to appeal our region, and I remember talking to the whole board that was sitting in there, and they could not believe. They literally, one of them said, "You mean to tell me that Gwinnett County doesn't have middle school football?" And I was like, "No, sir. Not one middle school has football. They play basketball and cheerleading at the time. And they've added a couple sports, and they've added soccer and volleyball and cross country since then. Um, but no, they do not play football. It is all run through the youth parks. And if you don't have a park, like Discovery still does not have a park, it's almost completed. But 11 years later, they still don't have a home rec park, which is just crazy to think when you think about all the other school systems and how you have feeder programs. And it's just Gwinnett, it's different. And like I said, it's been successful, um, for a lot of people, and maybe not so much for others.
So, what are some things as an athletic director that you sit down with your coaches before school year starts, and you tell them, listen, I'm going to provide you with
Mhm.
this kind of support, and this, whatever you want. XYZ is what I expect out of you guys. What's some of the XYZs that you expect out of your coaches when you sit down for your, kick off the school year meeting with
Yeah,
your staffs?
yeah. So, um, I mean, I tell them my expectations are that every kid has a positive experience, right? And I know that's so cliche, but I want everyone to feel that if I don't care if we go, 3-15 on the girls volleyball team, but I want the girls to remember they had a good time. And that doesn't mean I'm one of the most competitive people you've ever met, but it's about the experience, and I want them to feel treated, um, like they're first class. That means I want them to, if you're going to get them gear, if you're going to ask for $500 or whatever for player fees, then get them nice gear, get them the backpacks, get them a nice hoodie, get them, feed them pregame meals, have a nice banquet, do the things so they feel that it's first class, right? And if we only go 500, so be it. I love that some of my coaches do some leadership stuff mixed in. I got one of my softball coaches started a SALT program at our school, and we have almost 100 kids from all sorts of different programs involved in student athlete leadership team. And I said, hey, this is yours. I'm not. I'll take 0.001% credit for just encouraging you and helping buy food, but this is your program, right? And she's done an amazing job. And I think about those things that I push my coaches to be the best for their kids. And I'm a realist. I understand that you don't win the Kentucky Derby, with a mule, but that doesn't mean the experience of being there wasn't positive, right? And so I challenge them. I challenge them to be reflective. I don't remember what I listened to, but we do have preseason meetings as a whole coaching staff, and then I normally meet at least by walking around with each of my head coaches. And I meet with like Cam and some of my kid coaches that are in the gym. I mean, we just meet all the time by just walking around and just go having conversations. But at the end of the season, I do ask them to be reflective, and we ask 3 questions, and I just do start, stop, and continue. And it's real simple. What are some things you want to start doing, or tweaks you want to make? What do you want to stop? Maybe it's run its course. Maybe you need a new slogan. Maybe this fundraiser's kind of fizzled out, and then continue. What are you doing good that you want to build off and is doing good? And I ask those questions, and I think that's a great conversation starter for me. And then I have some things I don't ever really get much into the X's and O's. Maybe philosophy a little bit, but I try and be hands off, and I want my coaches to own their program. If they want to put in the work to make the baseball facility look better or softball look better, great. Let me know what you need, and I'll help you with some money. If you come to me with some visions, some ideas. And so like this last year, we got a big grant from the city of Duluth and some other sponsorship money. And we renovated we have an indoor baseball softball facility. And we put 6,000 square feet of new turf in there. And we're going to get some new nets this year. But now it's not just for baseball or softball. I've got soccer and some other programs going to go up there and use it too, And so I like visionaries, and I like being able to support them. Problem solvers. I tell my coaches all the time, it's okay to come to me with a problem, but go ahead and be thinking about a solution, right? Because if I got to solve all the problems, then I probably don't need to have you around, right?
So, what are some of the biggest problems that you have to deal with as an AD? I mean, I'm sure there's a chain of command and a progression that you want your parents to go through, and don't just call me initially. Make sure you talk to your kid's coach or whatever. How often do you have to get involved in those types of situations?
I think that's probably been this year. That's probably been the biggest problem. Is I think parents have been they felt that they can just go right above, skip the coach, skip me, and sometimes skip the principal and go straight to the district office, and then it all comes right back down. And those end up coming back, and I have to end up, talking to the parents or whatever. And sometimes though we've had a couple this year that I got this chance to, after sit and talk to the parents. Excuse me. After sit and talk to the parents, get a better understanding of, how in their mind how something was perceived, right? Like a lack of comment or something was perceived a certain way, and I go back and tell my coaches, hey, look, this is why sometimes email is not the best response. Pick up the phone, or hey, I know this is the last thing you want to do after you have basketball tryouts, but you might want to just make 10 or 15 minutes, make yourself available for a parent, right? Because sometimes, and this is another thing, when you're dealing with Atlanta, you're dealing with a lot of different backgrounds, right? And so email and lost in, like, it's just like texting. It's, if you're just texting your buddy, I'm not worried about how he perceives something I text him. But in email, there's a lot of back and forth. And so I've learned that my best thing is to sit down with parents, and I want to see them face to face. They can see my facial expressions, my body language, and I can hear them, right? And so I know it's been more time consuming, but I think this year it's been more than ever, but it's probably been as beneficial as ever, dealing with some of those parents. But other than that, I love being an athletic director. So a lot of the stuff that comes, I think it's different, right? And so there's no 2 days are ever the same, no season's ever the same. And I think that's what kind of keeps you on your toes and kind of keeps you looking, to always find ways to get better.
Well, that segues into the final thing I was going to ask you and close out on this is, what are some of the most rewarding parts of being an athletic director? And if you were going to be approached by a younger coach that's interested in going into athletic administration, what would you tell them?
I will say this, the most rewarding part about being a coach was having all the relationships with those kids. When I was coaching and teaching, I taught 150 kids and coached, 90 kids on freshmen and 200 in the program. So I knew personally a ton of kids, and I would see a lot of kids. And as an athletic director and administrator, you kind of lose some of that. So knowing that going in, that's the one part that I missed the most. So then on the flip side, the things that I think I value the most are those kids who I have felt like I've had the conversations with or have seen, or taken a personal interest in making sure that they, got to where they needed. There's a basketball player on my team right now. And I know he won't listen to this, so it's okay. But I got on to him early in the season about all of his tardies. And it's amazing that since I got onto him and pulled him into my office, in the last 2 months, he has had 0 tardies. And I said, it's amazing. I talked to him the other day. I said, yeah, it's amazing. You go from having almost 30 tardies in about 8 weeks to 0 in the last 8 or 9 weeks. And it's amazing what taking you out of weight training for 3 weeks and sending you to ISS to sit with the other basketball coach for 3 weeks, what that can do, right? And so I still, and that's probably more of a harsh example, but I still love that opportunity to mentor kids, be a father figure, similar to some of the ADs when I was in high school and some of the coaches, and kind of fill that role. I think it's still there. If you go looking for it, there's still a lot of kids that need that. I've had coaches. I have a couch in my office right in front of my desk, and coaches come and sit down there, and sometimes I can just feel it. And within a couple minutes, there's tears flowing, and they're telling me about tough situations and stuff like that. And I think having that opportunity to still be relationship based is huge. And that's probably one of the most rewarding aspects of the job, is still having those relationships with kids and the coaches, and seeing them be successful.
Well, Coach, you've definitely done that over the years, from being a high school player yourself, dealing with a disease that has affected you your whole life, that you still have to deal with, starting off in facilities and working your way up to being a successful athletic director. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Well, I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing how ignorant some of these comments sound.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate it.
All right.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. The rush of racing? Nothing beats it, but Chumba Casino comes close. Chumba's got fast spins, fun games, daily bonuses, and all the action you can handle. Now that's a ride. Ready to hit the throttle? Get in the driver's seat and head to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP, because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.